Okay, I'm live again. Let me make sure I can share this with everyone. There's nothing like a little tech challenge. All right, let's try this again. Good, okay. We are currently live. All right. I think I see this again. If you are on the call with me, go ahead and comment. All right, I see we have a few people joining. And I know we started a few minutes late, so yeah, I think that should work just fine. All right. Hi, Kanette. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for being patient with me. I'm not sure why that scheduled stream didn't work. All right, but I think this should be just fine. All right, let's start over again. Good evening, everyone. My name is Carrie Capone, and I'm the founder of The Spinning Hand. And welcome to day one of our 12-day sweater knitting challenge. Hi, Joan. I'm so glad you're here. So, Kanette and Joan, I'm actually finishing up your patterns for KCU, and I'm going to send you the sweater patterns for the upper back shaping and for the fronts tomorrow. So that's on my list for tomorrow. Kanette and Joan are both members of KCU, which is Knitting and Crochet University. Joan says, yay! And they've been very patient. So we're kind of going to do a modified version, like a quick and dirty version of what happens in KCU by going through and making a sweater together. And we're going to do it in 12 sessions. And this is session 1. Now, you do not have to make a sweater that looks exactly like this. Your sweater is going to fit you. This is the sweater that fits me. But the pattern that we're using, it's kind of a recipe, and you'll follow along and figure out how many stitches to cast on and how long to make it. And then at the end, you'll have a sweater that fits you. Hi, Kara. Welcome. I'm so glad you're here. And yeah, so let's dive in. I want to start by showing you a video on YouTube. It's one that I put together before tonight, and it's called Fun with Gauge. All right, so I'm going to share the screen. It's 4 minutes long, and it just shows you by casting on 15 stitches and starting with size 11 needles, the difference in gauge as you go up in needle size, and how important gauge is and making a gauge swatch is, especially when you're using chunky yarn. So for KCU, the sweater that we made, and you might have seen it on Facebook, my husband Dan is wearing it, and it's like blue and white. It's a worsted weight or an Aran weight yarn. So it's a little thinner. But when you're using chunky yarn like this, even one stitch off in your gauge, like 1 stitch per inch, that's going to make the difference between making a circus tent or something that's sized for a toddler. So it really makes a big difference when you're using super thick yarn. All right, so here we go. I'm just going to share the screen, and I'll see you in a minute. Okay, I'm going to do that, and I'll press play. I'm starting with size 11, which is just about the smallest that you'd really want to use for a super bulky yarn. And I'm also doing what's called a 1x1 rib, which is knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1, all the way across. Then when you flip it over and you do the next row, you're also going to knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1. And that's going to make columns of this ribbed stitch. Now, one way to make the fabric a little bit less drawn in is to do stockinette stitch instead of ribbing. So I am going to do a knit and a purl on the edges just so this doesn't get too curly, but on the front I will knit all the way to the last 2 stitches. Maybe we'll do the last 3 stitches and we'll keep the ribbing on the sides here. Okay, and now on the back, I'll keep the ribbing for a few stitches on each side and purl across. And the fabric will breathe a little bit and it will be extended a little bit. And I haven't added any stitches. It's just a different fabric, one that stretches horizontally more. All right, so I did 8 rows of ribbing, and now I will do 6 more rows in stockinette stitch, and you'll be able to see that it grows a little bit. So you can really see the difference between size 11 and size 17. You can really see some daylight. And now I'm even going up to size 19, which is 3 millimeters more from size 17. So 3 millimeters is actually a big difference. I mean, you can see what that looks like. So we'll do a knit, row. Now, if there's too much daylight shining between the stitches and you want to double this yarn with something else, like a little thinner, that will give you a nice tweed look. You can do that and use nice big needles. So for the sample sweater I made for our sweater challenge, some of the yarn was this thickness, some of it was even thicker. And so the part where I used this yarn, there is a little daylight shining through, but I kind of liked that look. Get the other needle. But if you want it to be more uniform and you want all the yarn to be the same thickness, you can maybe double this yarn, double the thinner yarn, or you can combine it with a thinner yarn to make your own look. So you'll really be able to see the difference in width using these bigger needles. Let's take a look here. Yeah, so from the beginning, where we just have about half the width of the needle here, to the end where these stitches are going to spread out all the way the length of the needle.
Okay, so that was my tiny cinematic effort. But then look at the result. And keep in mind, this is 15 stitches on the bottom and 15 stitches on the top. And what a difference gauge makes. You know, and the difference between size 11 needles and size 19 needles is a matter of millimeters. So it really makes a big deal. Hi, Regina. Great to see you. All right. So with that in mind, I want you to play with gauge before you cast on the bottom of your sweater. So the kind of sweater we're going to make together is a bottom up drop shoulder sweater. And so what that means is we're starting at the bottom of the sweater here, and we're going up to the underarms, and then we're not going to work in the round anymore. We're going to split it and do the front and the back panels separately. But the sweater shoulder is almost a straight line, so that when you wear it,
the front and the back kind of drop over the shoulder. That's what drop shoulder means. All right, so we're doing it bottom up as opposed to top down. And I cheated a little because I already made a sweater for this challenge. So I know that my number of stitches to go around the bottom is 72. And I'm going to use size 15 for the ribbing at the bottom and size 19 for the body of the sweater. So, okay, good. Regina says she's never knitted one bottom up. Should be fun. I hope so. All right. So when you're casting on 72 stitches or any large number of stitches, I like to use 2 strands of yarn at once. So these are the colors I've chosen to start with. We've got this nice coral color, and that is the yarn I used in this video. And then we have the purple, which is a little bit thicker. You can use 2 strands of the same yarn with this long tail cast on. I like to use 2 different colors just so that it gives it a little border. And oh, here we go. I did that on this piece of knitting. So here's what it looks like on the sleeve. You can see this like slightly lighter mint color. That is the contrasting color. And then this blue is the color that I continued to knit with. So how you do it is this. I made a slip knot using both yarns at once. And that's anchored onto the needle, but we're going to pull it out at the end. This doesn't count as a stitch. Now, when you do the long tail cast on around both fingers like this. Oh, Rika, hi, welcome. Yes, I'm sorry. Our first video on Facebook didn't work. So when you're winding the yarn around both your finger and your thumb, whichever yarn is around your thumb is going to turn out on the bottom. So I've got the purple yarn around my thumb, and that's the one that's going to be on the bottom. If you wanted to go crazy, then you could switch. So now I have the coral on the bottom. And by the way, if you ever find a pattern that says cast on 2 colors in one row, like cast on 5 of this color and 5 of this color, this is how you can do it. So it looks a little bananas, but but this is how you can do it. So 5, 10, 13. So you keep on going. And the nice thing about doing it this way is you don't have to guesstimate how much yarn you need to cast on, say, 72 stitches or 100 stitches. Or if you're using, let's say you're using fine weight yarn, this works just as well. You need to cast on 300 stitches. You don't have to say, oh, okay, figure all this out. Then when you're done casting on however many you want, you can just snip the end that you're not going to be using anymore. All right, so let's see how many I've got. 5, 10, 15, 20, 24. So we're going to keep going. And then here's 30. I think I'll put a marker on at 36 so that I don't have to count all the way back again. 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And I know I said I was going to do purple on the bottom, so I'm going to switch back now. And it'll just look a little fancy here. Okay. So Regina, I'm using size 15 to cast on, and that's about as small as I'd suggest for the body of the sweater when you're using thick yarn. I'm going to use size 15 and size 19. If you wanted to use like maybe size 11 for ribbing around the sleeves, the cuffs especially, that would be like really snug. That's what I started with down here. So you can really see the difference in the gauge.
Oh, I was going to put a marker, but instead I switched to coral. So, all right, I've got 33 more. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I highly recommend some nice long circular needles so that you can join in the round and not have everything feel squished. And as long as you're on my email list, let me know if you need any needles because I can ship them out to you tomorrow. I think I have plenty of large needles. All right, so 5, 10, 15, 20. We're almost there. 4, 7, 28. And then I'm going to show you how to how to join in the round without twisting the stitches. You know how in the pattern they always say, join in the round, being careful not to twist the stitches. And you're like, okay, but how? And then you end up knitting a Mobius strip. So 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 31. We're getting there. 2, 3, 4, 5, 36. Okay. So now I am taking off that extra loop where I use 2 colors at once. That is no longer needed. Thank you for your service. Boop. All right. Now, it is nice using 2 different colors because you can, oh, Judy, hello. Judy's on the call. So when you line up all the stitches and you have 2 different colors, you just make sure that that bottom color is always on the inside of your circle. So I know you can't see it, but I'm putting it down on the table briefly. Okay. So now, there. So now I know that all the little bumps are on the inside of the circle. So I know that when I join in the middle, it's not going to twist on me. All right. Now there is another way to do this, which I enjoy, especially if you're using one color or they're really small stitches and it's hard to tell, is that I would work one round first and then join. So you just get a little more fabric to look at. But that's not as necessary tonight. And also, I don't want you to feel like you're watching paint dry. So, so I'm looking at the knitting in front of me, okay? And normally, like, this is the yarn. It's on my right. I'm turning the whole thing around. All right. Turning the whole thing around. Now, I am knitting front. Oh no, I did it wrong. First, I'm transferring 1 stitch, which is really the first stitch that we cast on, to the left needle. Then I am knitting front and back. That last stitch that I just put on at the beginning and the first stitch. All right. I would call myself an expert knitter, and even I have to think about doing this. So please don't feel bad if it takes you a second. All right, so I'm knitting and then knitting again. And what that does is anchor the last stitch, or the first stitch that we cast on, the last stitch from the other row, and the first stitch of this row. Now they're connected, they're not going anywhere, and we're ready to go around and around. Okay, now, if you're on my mailing list, you're going to get a reminder tomorrow, and it's going to have a reminder about checking your gauge, suggestions for which materials to use, like the size needles, I'm using size 15, and super bulky yarn. All right. I'm going to link to videos showing you how to cast on 2 colors at once. I'm going to link to a video showing you how to join in the round. And I'm going to give you the first part of your pattern. So you decide how many stitches to cast on based on how big you want your sweater to be, but it's going to be several rows of ribbing, and then you're going to switch to stockinette stitch, and you're going to work even. In other words, you're not going to increase or decrease. This is just a tube. So Regina, as long as you're on my email list, like if you got the email reminding you about today's meeting, then you're going to get all this information. That's all you need to do. If you are not on my email list, please drop me a message or in the comments, or send a direct message on Facebook or YouTube. Okay. So that's what we're going to do. And then I will also send you the replay of tonight. But just in case you don't want to watch all that over again, you'll also have links to just the skills. And then tomorrow I'm going to go live at noon. You don't have to show up every day, but every day for the next 11 days, I'm going to show up live and just work on the sweater. And, you know, bring your knitting, bring your lunch, bring your coffee, and we can just chat and we can make the sweater together. Okay. Yeah, Sandra, super bulky, I would say, is a size 6. Size 7 is jumbo, which is more like the thickness of this needle, where it's like bananas thick. This is a little less bananas thick. Good question. Yeah, so I would say it's size 6 yarn, super bulky. Another way to figure out how thick your yarn is to do WPI, or wraps per inch. So you wrap it around your needle and then you measure 1 inch and see how many you get. But the best way to figure it out is gauge, doing a gauge swatch. All right. Any other questions? Well, I thank you so much for taking your time this evening. And thank you, KCU members. If you haven't already this week, I'm going to be sending you your KCU sweater patterns tomorrow and over the weekend. And I hope to see lots of you tomorrow. Thank you so much. Good night.